Hi, I'm Tommy, this is Smoke and Mirrors, and in a rather uncommon move, we're reviewing something that's brand new and shiny at the time of this video, Gears 5. I've been looking forward to another entry in this franchise for a wee while now, and I've since burned through the campaign and I'm preparing second playthroughs, alongside continuing to play the Versus, Escape and Horde modes. Is it the second coming of Gears? Not quite, but it provides some real incremental improvements on a lot of features from games past, as well as some new ideas that help refresh it for the future. So let's get into it. Some minor spoilers here for the opening hours of gameplay, but no plot spoilers, you're safe with me. Gears 5 has all of the core gameplay components that we've come to expect of the franchise. The cover shooting mechanics are just as satisfying and well constructed as they've ever been, with it once again having that weight of movement and impact that seldom few games have ever been able to replicate. There are some minor changes, partially the control scheme gets a wee tweak to accommodate the new mechanics for handling Jack, your AI bot companion, as well as a tweak to melee combat. But overall, the core of the game's mechanics hasn't really changed. There are some fun changes involving enemy AI characters and design, which I'll come back to in a minute. However, the rote linear design of Gears levels is the big element that gets shaken up. The first act of Gears 5 feels distinctly like its predecessors, playing as JD while fighting through war-torn environments facing off against enemies of various shapes and sizes. But after that first 2 or 3 hours, the game opens up and becomes a semi-open world experience, with acts built around hub worlds that you can explore to find upgrades. Yeah, there's a skill tree now, as well as collectibles. It helps the world of Serra feel more realised than in previous games, and amazingly the transition from focused linear levels to big open world hubs works incredibly well. For some, I imagine the navigating around these spaces might prove tedious, but I found it a lot of fun. What is even more interesting is that after the first act, you play as Kate for the rest of the game, which is helpful given she's the far more interesting character of the bunch. Dare I say it, it's the writing that's kept me involved throughout the campaign. Gears 5 picks up not long after the conclusion of Gears of War 4. It's continuing the story of new characters JD, the son of series mainstay Marcus Phoenix, plus Kate and Del. Without a doubt, the major change that Gears of War brought was the inclusion of this new generation of characters that helped bring a fresh perspective on things, as young adults who've been raised in a war ravaged by conflict, first by the Pendulum Wars and then the war of attrition against the Locust Horde. For me, they were a breath of fresh air, given we're rather used to Marcus's gruff moaning and Baird's sarcasm. Sure, it better fits more contemporary culture as well, given their desire to tell jokes and mess with each other, but it also opens up more opportunities in the storytelling, given their views on the authoritarian and rather fascistic coalition of governments, or COG, as well as their connections to existing characters or storylines. Gears has often suffered from its inability to deliver any emotional weight, and that in part is caused by the characters seeming to be unable to grow or develop from their gruff archetypes and their position within the established politics. In the original trilogy, we had Marcus's complex relationships both with the COG government as well as his father, and the underlying tensions of how the COG have caused just about as much harm as they have good throughout the Locust War. But given Marcus and his crew are walking slabs of monster-killing meat, you seldom get a chance to let them grow or develop. Be it Cole's fall from fame, Dom and the loss of his family, and Baird who, is just a dick really. But interestingly, the same themes of working with or against the authoritarian regime of the COG, as well as facing our legacies, are the core themes of Gears of War 4 and 5, but the characters still have tremendous room to grow and adapt. JD's desire first to rebel against his father and now seeking his approval is an interesting avenue, but the game makes a smarter move in transitioning over to Kate. As we shift to Kate, with Del helping out, the game seeks to address her family, her relationships with the COG, and some big reveals for the franchise. Act 2 is notably a great segment of the game, given it not only opens up the world as mentioned, but it's some of the best writing the franchise has had in years. It's always been a problem of Gears of War, much like Halo, in that it often fails to communicate a lot of the more interesting aspects of its narrative, but here it allows some of these new characters to grow, to foster new relationships with existing ones, and addresses plot points from the original franchise that were never really properly explained until now. Moving away from the plot, there are new swarm enemies that crop up throughout, once again creating new and interesting combat situations for you to address, plus some of the annoying beasties from previous entries make their return. It's all building atop that core combat layer and forcing you to reevaluate how to use cover, attack the enemy, and use your abilities and weapons. I'll avoid getting too much into it for now, given I'm going to be doing a design dive episode later this year, analysing the AI of Gears enemies, but I found them all to be welcome additions, even if some of them are a real pain when in the heat of combat, but it's kinda the point. A lot of them in this game feel like efforts to disrupt traditional Gears combat flow, be it the reject robots creating stealth sequences to the swarm flocks and later the scion wardens that often push you out of cover in an effort to save your own skin. Oh, and two final things. One, this game looked gorgeous in spots, with some of the best real-time lighting I've ever seen in a game. They're super proud of that rendering tech and use it to great effect at times. It's very pretty. Secondly, I was super impressed by the accessibility options, where as soon as you enter the game, before you even reach the main menu, it allows you to configure input schemes, including the Xbox Adaptive Controller, as well as subtitle size and behaviour. It's a super important step to enable players who need those tools to access them easily, and I hope this sets the standard for all future first-party titles. I think it's a fantastic idea. Moving away from the campaign, the multiplayer modes are a fun mix, with the return of Versus and Horde plus the new escape mode for up to 3 players. Versus has seen a shift towards character-based loadouts, each with their own set of weapon loadouts and perks. The new arcade mode is also a welcome addition for many people who simply hate the core loop of being gunned down by enemies rolling towards you with shotguns. That still exists, of course, in classic game modes like King of the Hill, but it also feels a wee bit better balanced now. However, arcade holds shotguns as a top tier item to unlock, but only for certain character types. Players start with specific loadout weapons, and then buy better ones through points earned by kills. It's very similar to things like CSGO, and I think it works pretty well. But hey, if it ain't your cup of tea, you can just go and play the original modes. Meanwhile, Horde is very much an optimised and improved version of that from Gears 4. You deploy your Fabricator, place defences and wait for the Locust Horde to attack. Plus you now get new defensive locations to hold as the wave number increases. There are some nice changes to the build tree in Horde as well, as the ability to retain money rather than auto-deposit, which I do think is a viable change. Plus, as mentioned, the character-based loadouts now also enable for special character abilities that you can trigger too, as well as passives that you can upgrade in-game using the energy you collect. It actually creates this interesting dynamic where you might be more inclined to spend the money on yourself rather than on the Fabricator, and I'll be keen to see how that plays out and whether that actually proves to be a good idea in the long run. I can see it working well with friends, providing we communicate, but with randoms it could prove really toxic if players hoover up all the energy for themselves. It's been difficult to maintain a game on the opening week of play, but I've had a lot of fun with it thus far. If you like a good PvE experience, then this will no doubt keep you busy. Thus far I've only had a chance to play with randoms, so I'm looking forward to getting to spend time on it with friends. And lastly there's Escape, the new game mode where 3 players have to speedrun through an established game map, which look like they're sort of pseudo-procedurally generated, I'm not sure, as the venom cloud that you've deployed is now destroying the hive and it creeps through it. It's good fun, and it makes for a fun and shorter experience than Horde. I managed to run through it probably about a dozen times now, and while it takes some getting used to, given it is at times the complete antithesis of the typical Gears experience, it's good fun, and great with a small party of friends. I can see me working on optimising my builds to get better at running through with a solid team, plus the number of difficulty options, combined with new maps being released for the mode, should give it some legs. While Gears 5 doesn't necessarily reinvent the franchise entirely, it's a fresh take on an old concept and it breathes new life into the series. In my mind, it's my favourite of all Gears of Wars since the second one, which is kinda high praise for me. I'm looking forward to putting a lot more time into the online modes and the inevitable insane co-op playthrough. Definitely worth picking up, and I'll be looking at it in more detail in the future over on Design Dive as I talk about the ever-evolving design of the enemy characters. Thanks for watching this Smoke and Mirrors episode. Support on Patreon to watch all my other episodes early and live comfortably in the knowledge that you're an awesome person who supports awesome things. Stay safe, have fun, I'll be back. Chainsaw.